I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that. And by the way, take a bow. All right?
Pride. Now, you may think that laugh is detestable. You may think the Turtle Man is unconscionable and appalling as an individual and as a human being. But whatever you think of Mitch McConnell, effective is also one of those terms that have to be put there. Obama gets a Supreme Court nomination. They wouldn't even bring him up for a vote. Like, that's how bad it was. Some of them even were arguing at the time, hey, maybe we should let the Supreme Court die on the vine. Maybe that's not an institution that we need. Why? Because they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. And in believing that Clinton was going to win, they believed that Clinton was going to basically, Democrats thought Clinton was going to win, and Republicans thought Clinton was going to win also. But in their mind, push it out to the vote. Just in case. Meaning they got nothing out of the deal if they didn't push it out to the vote and to the election. And so that's what they did. By the same token, it should have been Obama's pick. It was Obama's pick. At least constitutionally it was Obama's pick. But they didn't care. And the guy who's laughing here is laughing here because he knows he got away with it. Now, and if we're being bluntly honest, Obama didn't entirely fight for that pick because he assumed that Clinton would win the race, as opposed to actually fighting tooth and nail to get that pick in because you couldn't take the chance. Well, McConnell was able to stop it. Now, Trump is going to get a third pick. Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and now Amy Coney Barrett. You have to fight for that stuff. Meaning, if you're in a political competition, your objective at the time is either stop this nominee, get this particular person across. And depending upon whether you're Democrat or Republican, you're going to be opposite sides. But you can't be lazy about it. And you can't have a situation where it's your time to get this person in and you don't push with due diligence. Also, you would think, philosophically, constitutionally, at the very least, if you care about any notion of America in any real terms, you should also give the president due diligence in regards to his pick. Merrick Garland is somebody that Republicans would have chosen in a heartbeat. But with this notion or this idea of complete resistance against anything that Obama wanted, even he became tarnished by it. And even he became a person to which the Republicans couldn't go. Well, Obama didn't push for his pick hard enough, and now Trump has 3 picks. And this one, Amy Coney Barrett, is the one that is up right now in its Senate in the judiciary hearing. I think this is going to go out until Thursday. I'm going to show you some of her answers, especially on big ticket issues, because right now the 3 big ones, at the very least, that I thought of when the nomination first came up, or when RBG died, Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed. Obamacare, because that's in the courts right now, and that's most likely going to go to the Supreme Court. The election itself, meaning Trump attacking absentee ballots and all of this other stuff. Well, if the president of the United States is basically saying that the election is fraudulent, and you have anything that goes to the Supreme Court regarding the election, especially if it's dealing with the ballots and everything else, well, again, that's another thing that will be decided by the 9th member that Trump has just added. So what? You have Obamacare, you have, and Roe v. Wade, abortion in the United States. All 3 of those are big ticket items, and all 3 of those are probably going to be up for debate pretty soon. Obamacare is already in the court system. The Trump election, or the election for 2020, unless there's a landslide in regards to the polling, and even then it could end up in the courts. And yeah, Roe v. Wade, all of those things are on the ballot. Look, you could be mad, you could be pissed off, you could throw a fit, but at the end of the day, it is the Democratic Party that failed miserably. And failure has consequences. No, I don't want to appropriate policy that will bring people organically closer together in order to beat a man they're called a monster. And then that person loses. What did you think was going to happen? No one that Trump was going to put in that spot was going to be of unicorns and rainbows. All of these people were going to be bottom eaters or bottom feeders, if you want to call it that. I'm making the point that your electoral system and the candidates who are fighting in that electoral system are not there for shits and giggles. They're there for political combat. And in order to get things accomplished, meaning you have objectives that you want to get accomplished politically, you put people in there to do that job. The catch here, though, is that Democrats aren't in office to do a job from the standpoint of the public. Most lefties put Democrats in office because you were terrified of the Republican, not to do something in the affirmative. And so because they're not there to do something in the affirmative, they don't. And oftentimes with this thing of dollars and pitchforks, you end up with just a bunch of dollars and you have a bunch of candidates who basically orient themselves around cash, not around policies that is in the best interest of the public themselves. Well, again, failure has consequences. And in this very specific case, Hillary Clinton failed to a reality show host. And that reality show host surrounded himself with all sorts of creatures of the swamp. And this is what you get. I'm going to show you some of the answers that were given by the judge, Amy Coney Barrett, in lieu of trying to become the 9th Supreme Court Justice, replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So let's start with this question on 2020. Basically, if anything happened in this election where the president of the United States has been saying, oh, they're cheating in the mail-in ballots, it's fraudulent, it's corrupt, et cetera, and something happens where there is a contest, a disagreement, and I would imagine these disagreements can be fomented pretty easily, honestly, in regards to trying to get this thing into the courts. And if it comes to you, what are you going to do? Are you going to recuse yourself from that case? Now, recusing yourself will mean 4-4, which ends up with an even split, which is, to some degree, why you need the 9th. And I don't know how they resolve that if it's 4-4. But at the end of the day, they're asking her something different. Will you recuse yourself if it goes to the courts? Listen to her answer. Because I would make the case she didn't answer any of these questions. She dodged all of these, which gives you some idea of what the answers are going to be.
And let me tell you another area where he expects you to side with him. He expects you to side with him in an election dispute. He says he needs a 9th justice because he's counting on the court to look at the ballots. He says the election will be rigged. The recusal statute, 28 U.S.C. 455, requires recusal where impartiality might reasonably be questioned. Now, when the president declares he needs his nominee to secure his reelection, and then the nominee is ran through the Senate in record time during the middle of an election, some are going to question that nominee's impartiality. Would you, to protect confidence in both you and the court, would you commit to recuse yourself from any dispute that arises out of the 2020 presidential election?
Senator Leahy, I want to begin by making 2 very important points, and they have to do with the ACA and with any election dispute that may or may not arise. I have had no conversation with the president or any of his staff on how I might rule in that case. It would be a gross violation of judicial independence for me to make any such commitment or for me to be asked about that case and how I would rule. I also think it would be a complete violation of the independence of the judiciary for anyone to put a justice on the court as a means of obtaining a particular result. And that's why, as I was mentioning, I think to Senator Grassley, that the questionnaire that I fill out for this committee makes clear that I have made no pre-commitments to anyone about how I would decide a case. That's out of respect for Article 3 and its designation of the judiciary as a co-equal and independent branch of government.
That's ludicrous in real life. Like, in practical terms, In practical terms, does she honestly believe that Trump and Republicans chose her without a preconceived idea in their heads on how she was going to rule on various cases? The entire reason that they were fought for to such a degree is because of A, lifetime appointment, and B, their political ideology being baked in. Meaning when they choose you, they already know. They already know. They don't need a preconceived idea. They don't need you to explicitly say, I'm for this or for that. They already know you're a baked thing. You're a canned vote. They already know where you're going to go with it. And because they already know where you're going to go with it, that's why they're putting you on that bench. They don't need to have a conversation with you for you to say, yes, I will explicitly do X or explicitly do Y. There are all sorts of issues that may come up in the future where you have no idea on what they're going to be. What you want is at the very least to know that she is backing a particular agenda. She is backing a side. Oftentimes those things boil down the lines of class or militarism. And those are positions that you want her to be a particular way on going forward also. And hence her. I guess her saying that I haven't had an explicit conversation with the president of the United States implies that that's what you need to do in order to have a president or a party to know what you're going to do. Now, Republicans are not putting her up because she's rainbows and lollipops. They're putting her up because they have an idea in their head that when she is going from the standpoint of policy, that it would be in a particular direction that is in their interests. So there's that. So her making this point of I haven't had a conversation with people doesn't really matter. It's a moot point. It doesn't matter if you had a specific conversation. They're putting you up there because they know it. Here's the other point. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Meaning, if she was entirely against Roe v. Wade, she says, I am against even people who have ever read the word abortion. I'm against that. That's how much of an abortion hawk I am. Doesn't matter. The president of the United States gets his choice. The Senate gets to verify that choice with a yay or nay. And so, if the Senate verifies the choice of the president, who the public chose, deem this woman fit for service. Trying to get her about whether she's going to destroy Obamacare or Roe v. Wade, she's never going to say one way or the other if she's going to do it in advance, because that's always going to create headway. But will they pick her if she was not willing to do it? Probably not. And so, this notion of I haven't had any explicit conversation about this or haven't had an explicit conversation about that is irrelevant. There may be a headwind, don't misunderstand me, about doing something like getting rid of Roe v. Wade because it's been there for so long. By the same token, if her ideology, if she's a Catholic, she may be diametrically opposed to it in general. So, look, that's an interesting dodge. It's a nice dodge, but whether you had explicit conversations doesn't really matter. What matters gets into what will you do in those situations. And I suppose it's difficult to ask her a question like that because what they want is her to give a straight answer. And what she does not want to do is to give a straight answer. I haven't talked to anybody. I'm just going to follow the law. When she knows this notion of follow the law has a certain amount of human subjectivity that's built into it. Again, otherwise, you would not have people fighting over the Supreme Court in this way. Let's hear her talk about Roe v. Wade. This is the other issue that they're trying to bring up to get her to talk about it. And again, the president chose her. That's all that's required. Congress, Senate, needs to give her the stamp of approval. That's all that's required. That's what they're trying to do. And this could be one of the most substantial picks of the Supreme Court in our lifetime.
Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe can and should be overturned by the Supreme Court?
Well, I think my answer is the same because, that's a case that's litigated. It could, its contours could come up again. In fact, do come up. They came up last term before the court. So I think, what the Casey standard is, and it's a contentious issue, which is, I know, one reason why it would be comforting to you to have an answer. But I can't express views on cases or pre-commit to approaching a case any particular way.
I have not had conversations with people where I would have a preconceived notion of what I was going to do on this or on that. And again, to some degree, I got to be honest, all of this is theater. All of this is farce. At the end of it all, Republicans have the votes to do what they need to do to get her over the finish line before the election. And it is very possible that this election gets taken to the Supreme Court, in which case she can assist the person who put her there to keep him in office. Either way, though, from the standpoint of the Republicans that are in Congress, many people may think Donald Trump is going to lose, but whether Donald Trump wins or loses, having her on the Supreme Court basically allows them to reach into the future from where they are now. Trump would have gotten, a third of the members on the court picked by himself. So, yeah, whether he wins it or not, at the very least, from the standpoint of their thinking, we have somebody on the court to do that basically will work in our interests in perpetuity. Even if they stopped her, the person who Trump will put in after her would be just as bad. And so, I understand the consternation and everything else, but up to this point, Democrats have not been able to stop Trump in any mechanism or any measure in getting his picks through. And even in this shortened time frame, I have no doubt that he would get her through also. And so it's basically what you have. You have all of this stuff up for grabs, and a person who's being cagey about how the result is going to turn out, or at the very least her perspectives on those things in advance, even though despite her being cagey about it, everybody pretty much knows how she's going to vote on those items, which is why all the consternation exists right now. I'll leave this here. I'll say like, share, and subscribe, but the Coney Barrett is going to be, I still say it, probably one of the most influential Supreme Court picks that we've had in our generation, just from the power that she's going to bring on the right, on that bench. And all of those things like, again, Roe v. Wade, Obamacare, even the 2020 election, God knows what other kind of policy comes up in the upcoming years, she will be a major vote on. And she will be a certain weight on that court in a hard right direction. This nonsense about, I don't think about these things in advance. Nonsense. Her perspective is already known in advance. They wouldn't have chosen her for that spot to do that specific job if they weren't. Like, share, subscribe.